If you've heard people talk about revocable living trusts, but you're not exactly sure entirely what they are, you're not alone. I'm Darcel Lobo, an estate planning attorney in Washington State, and I help Washington State residents create revocable living trusts all the time. And one of the biggest things I hear is people saying that they need a trust because they want to avoid probate. Well, that's true, but there's more to having a revocable living trust than just avoiding probate. A properly created and funded trust can give you much more control over what happens to your assets and make things easier if you become incapacitated, provide privacy for your family, and allow you to create parameters of how anyone inherits from your trust. So let's explain what a revocable living trust is, what it doesn't do, and one of the huge mistakes that can make your trust almost kind of useless. So let's just start with kind of the definition on it. And what does revocable mean when it comes to your trust? It essentially means that you can just change your mind if you want to about your trust. It's not set in stone forever. You can update it, you can amend it, you can change it, you can just terminate it entirely. So if you change your mind on something, as long as you have capacity to make the decision, you can change your trust if you want to. You can change who your beneficiaries are. You can change who's in charge. You can change what happens to your asset. And it's important to understand this because a lot of people think that if I have a trust, it's set in stone, it's forever, I can't change it. That is not the case with a revocable living trust because you're the person who creates the trust, you're managing the trust, and you are the beneficiary of your own trust because you're the person who creates the trust, you manage the trust, and you benefit from the trust during your lifetime. You are essentially one and the same as your trust during your lifetime. You have total control. If you want to buy a house, sell a house, move money around, open and close accounts, you can do all those things. Your day-to-day financial life isn't going to change just because you created a trust. And that's one of the biggest differences between a revocable and an irrevocable trust. Now let's talk about what a revocable living trust is not. Again, because it's revocable, because you have complete control over it, this type of trust is not an asset protection tool. And sometimes people think I'll put my assets into a trust and creditors can't touch it. Well, no, that's not how this works. That's not how this trust is designed to function. Because again, you created the trust, you control it, you can change it, you can revoke it. You can take the assets back out of the trust if you want to. So putting those assets into your trust does not take that out of the reach of any creditors if you do have any. So you might be asking, okay, well, if it doesn't give me asset protection, what does it actually do? Well, trusts are actually pretty useful. And again, we've already talked about a little bit about avoiding probate. When you put your assets into your trust, upon your passing, it will not go through probate, and the trust will outline what happens to your assets. The next benefit of the trust is privacy, because if the estate goes through probate, then that is all public record. Anyone can see what your probate estate included, how much there were in assets, how much there were in debts or liabilities, and how much all your heirs received. Your revocable living trust avoids all of that. And so aside just keeping your estate out of court, at a probate court, it also gives you that privacy that you wouldn't have otherwise had. And next, with the trust, we can do far more than just cut checks and distributions. There may be a wide array of reasons why you don't want to give a lump sum to someone. It certainly can be if you have minor children. We don't want to do that. We can't do that. Under state law, they're not competent to inherit anything. So if you have 2 adult children and you want to say everything to the 2 adult children 50-50, great, we can do that. But maybe you want some more parameters around that distribution. Again, if they're minors, we're holding their funds until they've reached a certain age that you specified. Maybe they're young adults and you're still not sure they're quite responsible enough yet to handle an inheritance. Maybe you have a child who's not financially responsible. Maybe you have a child who may have, addiction issues. Maybe you have a child who has just other needs that you want to provide for and be conscious of when you're deciding what to leave them, how much to leave them, and when they receive it. We can do that in your trust. And so aside from just deciding who receives your assets, you also get to decide how they receive them, when they should receive them, and also who's responsible for managing the assets for the person. Now, we've talked about the revocable living trust and kind of the pros of it and how it works, but I want to talk about the mistake that can really ruin the whole trust plan if you make this mistake. Because you can spend thousands of dollars creating your trust, but then the estate still ends up in probate. And how could that happen? Well, if you don't fund it, The trust can only control what assets it owns. Creating the trust itself, that's just step one. There's still a step two of getting your assets into your trust, and we help you with that when we create your trust for you. Getting your real estate into your trust, any business interests into your trust, your personal property into your trust, helping you to make sure you name the trust as, the owner or beneficiary of financial accounts to ensure everything flows through the trust and avoids probate. So now the question might be, do you actually need a revocable living trust? The answer may be yes, the answer may be no. It might not be the right fit for everyone. That's why during our consultation, we kind of go over what your options are, what your needs are, what your objectives are with your estate plan. Then I help you decide what is right for you. For some clients, a will-based plan is perfect for them. For some clients, they do want the trust. We discuss with you kind of what your wants and needs are and helping you figure out the right option for you. And it really comes down to what do you want from your estate plan? Do you want it to avoid probate? Do you want the privacy? Do you have real estate outside of Washington State that we need to provide for? These are the questions that help us decide if a revocable living trust is the right fit for you. And if you're trying to decide between a will and a trust, and if you're not sure, make sure you watch this video next because I break down the pros and cons between the two options. And if you're a Washington State resident and you want help with your estate plan, give our office a call. We'd be happy to see if we can help you.